You're listening to the Forest School podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Southerden.
Oh. 2 fires going. It's a 2-fire kind of day.
There's actually 3 fires if you include the one in the bin.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'd made the mistake of taking some stuff out of the fire that I thought, I was like, you know when you put something on the fire and you go...
Lewis, what goes in the fire stays in the fire.
I know, but I thought the fire was out. I was like, okay, I'll take that out and I'll put it in the bin. So it was like a bigger piece of cardboard. Put it in the bin, and then it went, yes, oxygen! So now we've got...
A bin fire.
A bin fire, a campfire, and we're drying out our first layer of cob on a rocket stove. But I'm glad that you've highlighted at the start my bin
Excellent
fire.
Practice.
Excellent practice.
Just models.
Guys, I'm so
Perfect
relatable.
practice.
I'm so relatable. That's all I want to be.
And the other fire that's there, I did to make a hot drink.
Yeah.
And now there's no hot drinks. So now I can pretend that I did to do the washing up, which I have done. But really, it was just selfish. It was just, I want some coffee, so I'm going to boil a kettle and make a fire for that. And now there is no coffee.
Why is there no coffee? We haven't got any in
Well,
the cabin.
I think I probably took it home by accident. Didn't bring it back. Yeah. It's my own
Shaking
fault.
my head.
It's my own fault.
Shaking my
All
head.
around. And yeah, everything's a bit mouldy. But the
Yeah.
sun's shining.
It is a glorious still day. That's what... Okay, so here's my check-in then.
What's your
So I
check-in?
said I would check in
Oh yeah.
and use the podcast to keep me accountable. I have been journaling every day before I go to bed. I put it in the Facebook group. I've been doing a little summary of the weather. So in a couple of words like bright but crisp, or drizzly but nice, or little thing. I've been putting down in the second box. I've been putting down what gifts I've been given, and I've been feeling real hippie-y every time you write it down, because you have to write down, like, I've been writing down the food because I feel like the food. So I've been gifted some corn. I've been gifted, and then you get into like, Doritos are a gift, right? The gift from
It's a lockdown gift, for sure.
Walker's Lays, whichever. The gift of drumstick lollies. The gift of... I realise that I eat awfully, which maybe is a reflection. And I've been putting down what I've gifted other people as part of my reciprocity thing,
Yeah.
which is quite interesting. And then I've been putting down, at the bottom of the page, I've been putting down what have I made, like what have I made with my hands. So sometimes that's been food, sometimes that's been stuff I've made with the kids, like a Lego castle, or something, maybe it's been, I don't know. But what is interesting is I realised that whether my brain was looking for shortcuts, or, you know we said like it just sort of zeroes in on thinking about this thing. And I caught myself thinking on more than one occasion that my gift to my son, we're not seeing loads of people at the moment, so someone in my family, my son, my wife, my daughter, had been like, I didn't lose my rag. Like, that's my gift to you. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Because is that a gift? Like,
Well, you could phrase it in a positive way and say,
it's my gift of patience,
yeah,
or a gift
exactly.
of, like...
I gifted them my even temper and patience.
I was less of a knob than I could have been. And I really could have
And
been.
they should really appreciate that.
Yeah,
They
and then
should
I
be
was like...
bloody grateful, because I could have been a tosspot all day.
And then I was like, this journal isn't going to help. It's just going to make me feel
Yeah.
really, like, pumped up.
I was going to ask you that. Does it make you feel different when you've done it? Do you go, now I can go to sleep because I'm a good
think
human?
So far, it's not yet ingrained enough. So I've only been doing it for a bit under a week. And at the moment, it's on my bedside table, and at the moment, it's still a, like, get to bed. Shit, I've got to do that thing.
Yeah.
So it's not...
No more jobs? Oh, one more job.
One more job.
Yeah.
One more job. So I think it will trickle into my general subconscious.
Yeah.
How's your theme of sustainability going?
My theme of sustainability is going good after last week gifting some baby trees to a new home where they are going to be planted as a 7 metres of native hedgerow, rather than them going to waste. And, you know, we were like, right, let's do something with these trees. So that's really good. And the thing of, which is less like socially responsible but just interesting for me, the thing of like, what did I call it? Like old old knowledge or
Oh,
old skills
yeah,
or something that I was
yeah.
talking about. So I have been foraging for some wood avens roots, and I'm drying those out at the moment. And I'll check in with you on how they taste. But they're basically the equivalent of cloves before the spice roads
Oh, okay.
happened. So before we got spices from all the
Oh, and everyone
exotic-
was just eating turnips in
everyone
this
was just
country.
eating turnips,
And
but they were
oats.
eating like hogweed seeds and wood avens root. And if you find wood avens and you pull it out and you scrape off the mud, because the mud smells quite strongly, or wash off the mud, they do smell like cloves. It's amazing. So I'm going to dry them out so the flavour intensifies, and then you can use them like in a stir fry where you want a kind of warm clovey sort of flavour, or do more technical stuff and like grind them up into powder, which I will not be doing. But
Oh.
yeah,
Well, I
So I
look
did a bit of
forward
that.
to hearing. What are you planning to do with them? Stir fry them.
Yeah, I think so.
You could put them in kimchi.
Yeah,
You could be well hipster.
I don't know.
Foraged kimchi.
I
No,
don't think- it's not authentic, is it? No.
nothing's authentic.
No. That's right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. We both read an article, didn't we?
Yeah. Oh, I just dropped my phone on the floor.
In true Forest School podcast style. I read it a while ago. You read it. You read it.
I read it
when
yesterday.
You read it when I sent it to you, and then
And then I've
you've
sort of
reread
reread
it, so it's
just
fresher
now.
in your head than
Yeah.
in mine. That's the caveat that goes at the start of every podcast. Is
Yeah.
Lewis is going to ramble
Yeah.
in broad brushstrokes. But do you want to give us the title and
Sure.
who wrote it and all those
It's
things?
from a blog called I'm Unschooled. Yes, I can write. Celebrating self-directed lifelong learning. And it was actually written in May last year. And the title of the article is Education Outside the Fishbowl, Observation, Evaluation and How Children Really, in brackets, Learn. If a child learns in the forest and there are no adults there to see it, did they really learn at all?
No,
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. No, end of episode.
no. If nobody observes it, and it's not learning.
Yeah,
And then it is an interesting article, isn't it?
it is.
So
the author, I want to say it's a she, but I don't know that for sure.
okay, just say they then.
They describe a summer when their sister turned 13 and spent every day, all day, in a patch of woods with a bunch of other kids aged 11 to 14, and they built their own world with furniture scavenged from the streets and formed their own like small political systems and lived outside until they got too hungry and then they went home. And her sister is living this outdoor life, which isn't that unusual at the time because a lot of parents did just say goodbye to 11-year-olds.
See you at dinner.
Exactly, which is rarer now. And the author says that their mother was probably the only parent who viewed that entire experience as learning, whereas the other parents were just going, oh, they're just playing or they're just wasting their time. And so the article kind of discusses, is that learning and does somebody have to be there to see it? And the difference between that view of children being empty vessels to be filled with knowledge, top down from an adult, a qualified adult, or hands-on self-directed learning that happens.
Yeah, and it's sort of a lot of the article talks about, and we were talking about this the other day, not on a podcast, just as we were chatting, about that Forest School is great at the like soft skills and like social repercussions of things. That is like an inescapable type of learning is all that stuff of seeing how your peers respond to you doing a thing, and not it being like, and therefore an adult came down and decreed this or took that resource away from you or whatever else. There's something about that like world building that is like world building to me encompasses all of the rest of learning, because it has to by definition. But we sometimes talk about when the kids here will get into some real deep play about tribe building. They defend it, and it can either go down a like defending the land kind of route, and they get into politics and treaties and we'll trade this for this, or it gets into a like stockpiling, or you end up with like different roles, and all of that is like super important learning that it's almost impossible to like tick chart it.
Oh yeah, like even if you did, so the author of this article is saying if an adult isn't there observing it, obviously the author thinks it is learning, but a lot of people would argue that it can't be learning unless it is ticked off. But even if you were observing it, like a forest school practitioner observing all of this play, you would never be able to tick box it, because loads of it is internal and invisible to us and may pop out later, or trickle out little by little, or it's just so massive that how could you document? You can try, and we do try. We reflect and we observe and we chat about it and make notes about it and stuff, and look at the kids' needs and how they're developing. But it's so huge that it's almost insulting to the play and the children to like go, well, you have met this, requirement. The play you were doing over there, where you were talking about capturing the princess, but then so and so persuaded you to not use that massive stick. That meets
Section
learning,
4,
exactly.
Part 2. When do you think that? So, what I was thinking when I was reading this is like that idea that learning doesn't happen if no one's seeing it. And then I was thinking like, okay, so if you take that right back to the start of learning with like babies and very, very young toddlers, and that thing of, here's a horrendous thing. When I, friend of a friend, I'm going to get some distance between this. Their feedback for their child who was like, I think between 12 and 18 months, and was going to a nursery, and the nursery's feedback at the end of the term or something was like, this term we've been working on Gemma's, it was like independent play or like lone play, so that she can play on her own for extended periods of time without like needing us or without needing her peers or something, in a weird way that was like, I was like, oh, okay, that sort of sounds like neglect. Like and then I was thinking, well, okay, so a lot of early childhood is spent with people going, as I am personally in the throes of a 18-month-old and a nearly 4-year-old, I wish you would just be okay on your own for 5 fucking minutes. And then at some point that obviously changes, where we go, no, I need to be with you so that I can see where the learning is happening. Or like I need to see the play. I need to see the like drama performance at the end. I need to see the outcome. The outcome, even if you like, it's almost the trade-off is like, okay, you can have some independent time, but we would like to see the gymnastics recital, or we would like to see the I don't know, the pieces of art at the end.
And why is that? Because that's like a drama lesson. Like that's your standard drama lesson in secondary that I would have taught. Is like,
fuck off, see you in an hour.
No, well, here's your, I was going to say, here are your parameters, constraints. Yeah. Make a thing with these constraints in a group of 4 people, whatever. And that's a whole other podcast episode about constraints. There's like there's a thing on Twitter. There's like a little moving diagram thing. It's like mind blowing. Okay. But that's a whole other thing. But then you would see the work at the end. Yeah. But the learning isn't happening in the performance of the work. The learning is happening in the making of it, or like there's also an equal amount of learning happening there. If it's a complete flop, if you can't communicate, if you've got nothing to show for it at the end.
Well, I guess that's where the learning is at the end, isn't it? Is learning that if you don't do the thing. Yeah. But that's one type of learning. All of what you actually want people to learn in terms of content, in terms of practice, social skills, ingesting, if you like, the curriculum, that is happening in the practice bit. It's not happening in the performance bit. Yeah, exactly. The performance bit is like learning your societal roles or learning the impact that your stuff has, but you're learning that anyway when you're doing anything in a group or anything individually.
That kind of comes back to this quote that is in the article, which is one of my favourite John Holt quotes. I haven't read John Holt. We were just talking about it earlier. Yeah, he's written a book called How Children Learn, which sounds like we should read it, but also sounds like it's everything that we spew out of our mouths every 5 minutes, so maybe it's pointless.
It's good to preach to the choir sometimes.
Yeah. To trust children, we must first learn to trust ourselves, and most of us were taught as children that we could not be trusted. I think that's quite an interesting idea. And if you challenge yourself and you go, so come back to what you were saying about, but I need to observe you, I need to watch you, because not just that I can't trust you with your like behaviour, that you'll be safe or that you'll do the right thing, but also that I need to check that you're learning. I need to check in on you, and I need to observe that happening.
Yeah.
Because that's the way that we, unless we've been unschooled.
And that then feeds into it, doesn't it? Into the sort of Alfie Kohn unconditional parenting type of thing, where like if you use praise in terms of verbal praise, praise in terms of rewards, all these kind of things, then that creates a link in people's heads that like the learning will get a reward. So if you don't get a reward, it must not be learning. You could flip it that way, couldn't you?
And what about times where at Forest School, if you're following an Alfie Kohn type approach, and so, but you wanted to like engage in a dialogue with somebody, you might, instead of saying, that was great sharing you did earlier, you might say, I saw you pass the trowel to so-and-so when they asked for it earlier. And so you might phrase it like that, right? That might be a more Alfie Kohn
You're just
friendly way.
articulating what's happened.
Yeah, you're kind of documenting it, and then you might say, how did you feel about that? Or they looked really happy. I saw that they looked really happy, and it's quite a kind of neutral way. But then that is kind of going back to that thing of, is a thing, you're still kind of validating it and rubber stamping it in a way. It's like, because I observed it, therefore it was worthwhile, therefore it counts as learning, therefore it counts as a valid thing that you did. All the rest of the stuff that I'm not talking about, that's not valid, or that's not important. But the thing that I'm going to pick up on, that is valid.
No, I would disagree. I think
I'm being a devil's advocate there.
I know. I think what you are doing with those statements, or maybe what the intention is with those statements, is to highlight or give a lens that you hope that the children then carry with them when you're not there. So noticing that so-and-so smiled when you shared the resource with them is hopefully something that when they are off then doing a game another time and they give someone a thing and that person smiles, that triggers a thing in a different way than I gave. So if they saw someone smile, because of that you went, hey, you've just made Sophie really happy. Here's a gold sticker, right? Then this is the Alfie Kohn thing, is then when they're on their own, the thought process is going to be, well, I won't get a sticker out of this, so it doesn't matter. I don't need to look at whether Sophie is happy.
You could, just playing devil's advocate here. Maybe the same argument applies if you go, well, someone goes, well, there's no one here to observe me doing it and to comment on it and make me feel good with their adult comment. Because I'm kind of, maybe just the phrasing of it isn't important. It's the fact that the adult is noticing it and therefore validating it, even without praise, that you might go, well, the adult's not here to see it, so I'm just not going to bother doing it. I don't know.
I'm wondering whether there's something different there between... So a thing that we do quite often is... we were talking... Might even have been in the last podcast about how we put in... Rather than one big reflection at the end of an all-day session, we do sort of mini reflections at snack and at lunch and halfway through the afternoon. And quite often the question that gets asked is, what have you guys been up to? I've not, and the advantage of there being two of us means that we can legitimately go, you've been off with Gemma, what have you guys been up to? And they then get a chance to feed back on what's been happening and put their own value judgments on what was important to, out of that experience, what do they want to relay? What do they not want to relay? If they've had a difficult experience, nobody goes, actually, me and my brother had a real bust up over there, and Gemma had to step in and sort it out. That's not what they come back with. What they come back with is like, we've been finding treasure. They naturally are sort of optimistic and positive and find the positives out of what they've been doing when they relay it to you. What I'm wondering is whether that is a observation by proxy, whether that is sort of still going, I need to check, did you do a play? Did you do the game you said you were going to do over there? I don't know whether that is different in its impact.
Support the podcast today by becoming a Patreon member at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
Or whether, I wonder if it's to do with the knowledge that you're not going to be observed, because I think that impacts the practice. So the knowledge that, for lots of children, or lots of learners even, the knowledge that you have a ticking clock getting down towards, at 2 o'clock, Mr. Southerton's going to make us all stand at the front and we're all going to have to read our, what we've written so far, and then that becomes the stress, and then the stress is overwhelming, and then you can't do it. The knowledge that just this isn't going to get seen, don't worry about it, changes how you do the practice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
completely. And in this article, it quotes Carol Black talking about the evaluative gaze of school, saying there is something profoundly deadening to a curious, engaged child about the feeling of being watched and measured, or even some studies suggest the anticipation of being measured. So some, and Carol Black says, some kids seem to compete with their friends and thrive on it, whereas others just shut down. I've seen kids drop what they're doing in an instant when they realise they're being observed in an appraising way. A wall goes up, the lights go out, which is really interesting, isn't it? Because that is something, as a forest school practitioner, when you're observing play, sometimes we talk about how our site is good because it's on a hill, so sometimes you can watch
without being seen.
So you can check in on everyone and check that everyone's happy and safe and okay, but you're not very obvious as an observer, because sometimes when you become very obvious, then the play does stop. You've broken the magical spell, and they wouldn't ever tell you go away, you're not welcome, because they're nice.
Some of them. Some of them would. Some of them would go, maybe it's just my son would go, can you go over there now? He tells me this at home.
Go there.
Can you? Don't look at me for a minute. I'm going to look, because when you say that, it means you're going to go and do something. Don't look upstairs for a minute. Why? What are you doing? I need to...
And it's completely a play worker issue, isn't it? It's like, if you're involved in play work, the way that you're adulterating play just by existing in the same space is a really interesting thing to consider.
Top tip for anybody listening. Get yourself a ghillie suit.
Yeah.
Right? Because it looks like you're wearing a bush, and you can fully sneak around.
And it doesn't freak the children out at all.
Doesn't freak them. In no way do they see it as a monster and try and beat you with sticks.
Exactly. In no way is it dangerous for you either, because they never actually attack you and actually try and kill you.
Do you know what? Genuinely what one of my favourite games... I'm sorry, this is a tangent to this article now. One of my favourite games with a group of children we have is there are a couple of boys who will go off. They are rarely involved in the big group game, and they will just go off on their own. And they really enjoy the game where I just try and sneak up on them, and I would do it at every sort of 10-15 minutes for the 2 hours, and that is the most exciting thing for them. And if they see me, they just go "Who's there?" And then I go, "I've been caught," and I run off, and impish way. But that is some of the most interesting stuff, is when how close you could get and just go fully observing them, and they're just in a treehouse on their own going yeah, right, so he's probably going to come up from this side. Yeah, we need to get strategizing. We need to get this stuff. Yeah, I'll look up that way. And obviously the joy of them looking completely the wrong direction and going, I'm going to look up that path. Yeah, and you keep an eye on that path. And just finding an obscure animal noise or something, going "Caw!" and they just turn around oh God, we never thought about this.
Yeah.
That is very fun.
Well, that's one of those examples of the type of play which is all about setting up the play. So we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. Yeah, and then because and it's just social play, isn't it? It's just talking and planning and plotting and
And I developed that with a different group where I picked up a load of leafy branches that had fallen on the floor, and I was just attempting to sneak up on the treehouse from different directions, but at a really big distance. So one of them would spot me and go, "He's over there on that path," but they would all go, "What? Where? Where's the thing? Where's the thing?" And then I could just give one of the branches a little bit of a shake, and it was like it was testing their eyesight.
Yeah.
To be that tree moved in a weird way. They're doing all that, Sorry, that's a tangent about me sneaking up on kids.
Yeah. joy, like, absolute joy.
Absolute joy.
Another thing this article points out is how it's weird how we... Hello, woodpecker. It's a yaffle.
Waff, 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 waff.
It's the first time I've heard it, actually. How we as adults, teachers, parents, whatever, kind of only tend to value learning in a kind of learning environment, inverted commas, in a formal way, in a way that can be assessed and measured. But we ourselves have been learning in an informal way, in a way that we choose since we left school. It's not like we leave school or university and then we just stop learning. We're learning all the time through our own means and methods.
Yeah.
But we don't seem to value that or kind of give ourselves credit for doing that. So therefore we don't have that attitude towards our children.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's an interesting thing to think about, to go, oh yeah, like...
Waffle, 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 waffle. Yeah, it makes me think that I think one of the things that impacts that feeling of having been, in teaching and going like, I'm going to watch and check that everybody's learning, is that feeling of like the value of your time as the teacher. So one of the things that I would say lots of adults learn and continue to learn in very distracted ways. We read a bit of this, then we go and get a cup of tea. We maybe come back to it. We watch 5 minutes of a programme every night on TV. Right. But if you are then somebody who said, I'm going to watch you do I'm going to come and watch every time you do the learning. I've got to stand here every time you do 5 minutes. And then the person you're watching goes and gets a cup of tea, and you're almost pointing at your watch going, excuse me, this is my time that I'm here observing you on.
Yeah.
So can you be 100% focused and do whatever?
Yeah, and think of all those times that you go, well, no, to that person, that much about you go, no, I'm not in the mood now because I'm really tired, or I'm not in the mood now because I'm actually really pissed off, or I was in the mood until you stood there, and now I'm not in the mood.
Yeah.
And so, of course, kids are feeling the same way all the time.
One of the... again, it's sort of like when you look back at it, it's like embarrassing that someone had to sort of point it out to you. But someone once pointed out to me, so in primary school in the UK you do guided reading. In most schools you do it every day, and you might do it like after lunch as the like calming down after you've been in the playground and you've had fun, and let's you sit in your groups, and I'll work with one group every day, and I rotate around and all this stuff. And they say, how many of you this was like an inset day. Like, do you sit with them in guided reading? Yeah. And what sort of stuff do you do? Oh, we ask, questions about how's that character feeling, and we ask things. I went, if you sat down to read a book in the evening and your wife sat next to you and every 2 minutes went, who's the main character in your book? Why are they doing that? How pissed off do you think you would be? How much do you think it would kill your enjoyment of the book? And, hindsight, you go, of course it is. And the same is true, I think, of learning. This is basically this whole article, isn't it? It's like every time you get interrupted, it's an unnatural stop.
Yeah.
It's an unnatural kind of like, if you know anything about flow, you would stay a mile away and go, let's just not get involved.
Yeah. What I think also is interesting is trying to consider, if you start talking to the kids about their own learning, what effect that has as well. So as a parent of 2 kids who have been in traditional school and now are not, they have some ideas about what counts as learning and what doesn't count as learning. And then when you're trying to find your own way in home ed, and whether you're kind of going to go full on unschooling or not, or trying to replicate school at home, and you're trying to find what works for you and your family. And I've been in school, my half has been in school, my kids have been in school for some time, so all of us have this this kind of embedded notion of what learning looks like.
Yeah.
And obviously, because of my forest school practice, that my view of that has broadened and changed. It probably wasn't ever as traditional as your average teacher, but so I have had to work quite hard at kind of just offhandedly saying, well, play is learning. So if one of them might make a comment going, well, we've just been playing. I was like, well, just been playing is, playing is important. You are learning through play. And so now they will sometimes want to talk about it and go, well, everything is playing, isn't it? I was like, oh, okay, is it? Let's have a talk about that. Everything is learning, isn't it? Let's have a chat about that. But if you, in forest school setting, for example, on those like mini reflections, you could, for example, go, well, what do you think you've learnt today? But then does that that's quite a hard question to answer.
Oh, so hard.
And B, like if you brand something as learning, like is that going to have a
Gets
positive
tag
effect
put on it, doesn't it?
or a negative effect? Like, because I can imagine you could argue with and I know lots of self-directed learning kind of groups and schools talk about that all the time with their kids. They're like, where are you right now? Where do you want to be? You're choosing your journey. You're here. This is about learning. This is about you.
It can become quite a lot of pressure, quite a lot of onus.
Yeah. But then you could say it gives you a lot of ownership and pride, and you kind of get this view of your journey. So you could kind of argue it both ways. And I guess it depends on the child. And
I think it depends on the activity, because I think some activities lend themselves to progress at different timelines. So I'm thinking about something like any kind of sport, let's say. You are likely to not, if you're doing long jump or something, you're not likely to increase your jump every time you go and do long jump for the entirety that you do long jump. You just don't jump longer and longer and longer. So I guess it's that equation between learning and progress, and that they're not synonymous. Because if you get into like, you're building the Lego was learning, then you might instill that, like, if you built a castle this week, maybe next time you get the Legos out, maybe you'll build a castle and a half, maybe you'll build a better castle. And so any type of like, either, I don't want to say stagnation, but any kind of like repetition, let's say, or regression would be seen. Then it becomes like, well, that wasn't learning because last week I got to level 5 in Minecraft, or
and it's a lot of pressure, as you say, on the child to have that kind of self-awareness and understanding of what learning is. Like, that's an impossible thing. And I think you're right. You would latch on to progress and achievement as opposed to learning, which is a different thing.
Yeah,
I was reading. There's a bit of a kerfuffle at the moment amongst the home ed community in Britain because there's been a recent government sort of review of home ed in the UK, and they're trying to decide whether they want to regulate it more, inspect more, impose more sort of regulations upon it. And at the moment, the blurb from the government says that you can choose as parents, like as long as your child is getting some form of education, you can decide what that is. So it does allow for unschooling, and it says that no methods or approaches should be viewed as more valid than others, and that the education should be measured upon outcome rather than method. And then there's some parents kind of going, yeah, but what does outcome mean? Like, that's the sticking word there. They can get us on that, and they can change it, because like if their outcome is, well, can you do GCSE maths by the time you're 16?
Yeah, outcome implies that it's going to be measured at some point, whether it's measured at 5 or 16 or let's kick it down the road. Let's say you get everyone measured at like 33.
Yeah.
Right, and you just go like, okay, how well has your method done when you've had a bit of adult practice? Because I think that's what lots of the stuff that's talked about in this article, and lots of stuff that we talk about as like self-directed learning and home education learning, is they're more adult skills. They're less hoop jumping, like, hey, do you know how to do an array? And it's more, do you know how to manage some finances? And that stuff doesn't show up when you're 12. It shows up when you're 25 and you've got
sometimes it does, because you get like home ed teenagers running their own small businesses and things like that, and you're like, okay, well, there you go. Yeah,
but what I mean is, if you compare it to somebody that's maybe in state school, it might seem like somebody in state school is leagues and yards ahead because they have got 9 GCSEs or whatever, whereas the other person's only got, and you say only in quotes, they've only got healthy relationships with everybody they know, and a solvent bank account, and
the confidence to approach things.
And the ability to teach themselves their own thing, and positive mental health and anything else. I don't know where I was going with this sentence.
No, I don't either. My feet are turning to ice.
Are they?
Yeah. There's a good article I just read as well by Peter Gray about maths, about learning maths, which maybe we should talk about. Forest School maths, because, there are books written about that shit, aren't there?
There are.
There are books about outdoor learning, doing maths outside.
And number stories.
Number stories. I don't know what a number story is. I know what a number sentence is. Is that the same thing?
No, it's like the sneaky stories where you all the way through, and it's like, I can't think of a good example now. I mean, they probably range from, they went to the Castle 5, and the castle had 5 towers, and everybody ate an apple because it has 5 seeds, and the shape of the house was a pentagon, and like reinforcing 5s. And they split the guards, but there were 2 on one side, 2 on the other, and 1 who couldn't be split. 5 is an odd number, said the kid. You can get into that level of...
Oh, great. I'll look forward to your number 5 story.
Thanks, I've just written that off the top of my head.
It's really engrossing. I want to hear what happens at the end.
Me too. Okay, maths next time then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I've said all there is to be said about that in one sentence.
That's the consistency you get with this podcast. Enjoy. Maybe we'll see you next time.
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.